Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. I am so excited to be here with you all on this Thursday, May 4th. And yes, May the 4th be with you here in the States. You know, a lot of times when you read a book, you really don't understand the full depth of someone's story. And today's guest was previously on the Stories podcast back in October 14th to be exact, in 2022. And her book, I See Me, is really a testament, but more of a memoir documenting her journey from less than to enough, from fearful, in pain, and angry to open, courageous, and alive. I've read her book. It is phenomenal, and I'm so excited to welcome back to Stories the author, Philippa Robinson. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks. It's brilliant to be here. It's really lovely to come back. I feel like we know each other a bit more now, so it's lovely.
Yes, we do. Excuse me. When we chatted earlier, about 7 or so months ago, one of the things that really stands out to me when I started the story series, and as well with your stories, it's really the story behind the story, because you go from a place of feeling, as you mentioned, less than to enough, to where you are today. And really, it is your mission, your soul mission, I should say, to guide people to be the truest versions of themselves. Because, as you put it, this is the greatest gift we can give ourselves.
Yeah, that's what I believe now. Yeah.
And the gift really can be evolving for many and go over a course of several years.
Yeah, and some as well. I'd say, I'm still evolving. I think some of the things we might talk about today, I might have slightly different things to say than I would do 7 months ago. It's a continuous path now that I'm on, that I have been on for the last 6 years. So the gift is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes, it certainly is. And I think it's so inspiring on so many different levels that you were in a place and now you are where you are today, helping others. When you think of helping others, what is the first thing that pops into your mind as it relates perhaps to your story?
The first thing that pops into my mind is actually hurt little children. So it turns out that when I work with people, what actually happens is I can connect to that hurt part of them, that frozen hurt part that is still really wanting to be safe, still wanting some attention, perhaps wanting whatever it didn't get, or what we didn't get, because that part of us is us. So for instance, when I did this work, it was about working out for me, what did I need back then that I didn't get, which was really simple things like love and attention and feeling safe and feeling like I mattered. How can I get those things now, which, now as an adult, which, as a 50-year-old woman sounds like a weird thing to be saying, but I learned that was really important to help that inner part of me that was still very hurt not feel so hurt, feel seen, feel loved. And then basically she stops playing up. She stops me feeling so angry. She stops me thinking that I'm not worth anything, I'm not worthy. And it's allowed me that integration, that the work that I did has helped me move forward. And what I see a lot of the time with the people that I now help is that I can connect to that really hurt part of them and help them heal that part. It's not really about healing the adult, because most of us in our good adult version of ourselves know that we are safe, know that we are doing the best job that we can, know, we know things as an adult, that when we are triggered into that hurt space that we have been in the past, the ability to know those things just goes away, because our thinking brain at the front of our head just goes completely offline, because we're triggered into a trauma response, basically.
And that trigger response really can mean so many different things depending on whatever situation, obviously.
It's a real individual thing. Yes.
Right. Maybe it's something that triggers me, obviously wouldn't trigger you. And I think as a human race as a whole, I think we need to kind of know that we don't know perhaps what somebody else is going through.
Yeah.
Because for every action, there's a reaction. Excuse me, but I do believe there is, I don't want to call it a validation process, but there's to solidify your feelings, to validate those feelings. I believe gives one confidence to hopefully work through those situations, work through those triggers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember the very first therapy session that I had. And, I didn't know when I went into therapy, I had no idea that one of the reasons I was so angry and was so miserable, despite having ticked all the boxes. I was married, I had children, I had a good job, I ticked all the boxes. Society tells me I should be really happy, and I'm not really happy, which then adds to the whole guilt of it. So for numerous reasons, I end up in therapy. And one of the things that the therapist says to me is, you do know that what you experienced is not okay. And that was the very first time, I'm actually feeling a bit emotional just saying about it now. That was the very first time that I got that validation, that actually feeling upset and hurt and angry about it was okay, because what had happened was not okay.
And I saw that emotion come out in you. What I just saw there again was validating those feelings. And the anger part of it, I could see obviously where that would come into play. But when you validate someone's feelings, there is a confidence, there's almost a power that somebody is finally seeing me, somebody's finally listening, not just hearing me, not just seeing me as a mom and checking off all the boxes, but they're seeing me for who I actually am.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that was, so important to move forward, and to then begin to understand how. So for me, the process was very much validating what had happened and what had gone on. And then the next step, I'm making this sound really simple. This is a very watered down version of what went on. But the next step was understanding how my reactions to triggers were still with me in the present. So how what had happened in the past and my reaction and my way of dealing with it then, or all subconscious, but that was very much still with me in the present. And that is a constant. I'm constantly working on that. I was triggered about something just not 10 days ago, and it took me 2 days to work out what was going on. So it took me 2 days instead of 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. It's getting quicker, but in the moment I still didn't understand why I was having such a big reaction to something.
And I think with that, obviously, there are a lot of mixed emotions, like you just said. Instead of 2 weeks, it took you 2 days, because it's not that you are not you cannot get those feelings again, something triggered you.
Yes. Yeah.
But
And
now you have the tools
yes,
to help work through it.
absolutely. And I also, yes, so I have the tools to work through it so that I don't end up drowning in it in a way and awash with shame for having reacted like that, because that's, certainly would have been my pattern in the past. But even in the moment with what was going on, I realize now I was definitely triggered because something was happening that directly affected me and nobody was taking any notice. Nobody asked me how I felt about it, and I didn't feel that I could speak up. But when somebody said to me, "Oh, what do you think?" I had two choices. I either lied and said, "Oh, it's okay," which is probably what I would have done in the past, or that was my moment to be honest. And I chose to be honest. And I said, I don't like it. And I'm actually really upset about what is happening. So I owned the way I was feeling. And that is what I have got from everything that I have learned, I suppose. I am able to articulate my feelings in a way. I don't mean the words I use. I'm able to say how I'm feeling there rather than feeling like I can't own how I'm feeling about something. And I've just got to be the ultimate people pleaser and say, "Oh, yes, that's fine." So I knew I was feeling something big around it and I owned that, but it was only 2 days later that I realized why I was having such a big reaction to it. And that was all about not being seen, not being heard, and things happening around me that I felt I had no say in, because that was very much my childhood story.
Wow. You said a lot of critical things there. And I think when you said owned it, it made me think of different things. That word own triggered me in a way, not
okay.
that in just a moment.
Yeah.
But that gives you a sense of empowerment. Like you said, hey, I could have said, "Oh, yeah, this is great," but you owned your true feelings. And even though maybe the other person on the receiving end, depending on how they reacted or did not react, that gave you a sense of relief, I believe.
Yep.
A sense of empowerment.
Absolutely. They didn't like it. They were really shocked to hear that I was, not only did I not like it, but that I was really upset with the way they dealt with it. And they didn't like me being honest and open about it, but they were busy. Then it all started a bit of toing and froing, and they started throwing into all the, "Well, you've done this and you've done that." I was like, "Whoa, hang on a minute, that was years ago." Anyway, let's just draw a line under it, because there's nothing I can do about this situation. But I felt a lot better having owned how I felt about it, and instead of then giving myself the critical voice didn't come in and go, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that," or actually the voice is going, "Great, well done for standing up for yourself, well done for owning how you're feeling about this." And also, I think there is a big thing around that here, that I was just telling them how I felt. I wasn't having a row with them, but I don't know. I grew up in a family that was full of chaos, but nobody ever owned their feelings. And there was no, everything was either swept under the table and not talked about, or was a massive conflict. And I don't know where the middle ground is, where you can own your feelings, but it not turn into a big conflict. And that's sort of the piece I'm working on at the moment, really, how to rethink around what is conflict and what is not conflict, and how can I own my truth? How can I own how I'm feeling about something without starting an argument?
That makes so much sense. And I really understand that. And I want to go back to the owning part for just a moment, because I did mention that word triggered me. And shortly after your podcast back in October. A few days later, about a week or so later, I get a call from my son's cell phone. Unfortunately, that was his 12th emergency hospitalization.
Right.
So as long story short with that, as I'm driving to Philly and, getting updates, and I remember saying to the doctor at once, because they did tell me before I left for Connecticut, I get the question, how quickly can you get here? And I'm like, oh my God. Anyways, and I said, I will be making pit stops along the way, and I will obviously pull over. I'm not going to be upset driving. I can't be. And my phone did ping a few times, kind of glanced over, didn't recognize the number, whatever. Long story short with all that, just as I'm driving into the hospital, I realized as my cell phone was pinging that I was triggered by, whether it was a news alert, whatever it was, the phone ringing, I was triggered, and I owned it. I'm like, okay. I was proud of the fact that I realized what was happening in the midst of all that chaos. Anyways, by the way, again, I always tell everyone Ryan's doing very well.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I am blessed and grateful, but that may seem little, but for me, it was a huge thing. You get news alerts, you get these alerts. Every time the phone rings, oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And especially if you will feel like that if you've had lots of calls from the emergency room saying you've got to get here. That will trigger a trauma response in you, won't it? So and that feels like quite a big piece for you to have realized that that's what was happening.
Yes, it really did. And I'm glad that I recognized that, because it really gave me a different type of perspective. And, obviously I remember saying to my family, I'll call you as soon as I know something. Because I knew that I was obviously, excuse me, driving down to Philly. I'm in Connecticut, and, it's a long drive. And obviously I have a lot of time to think. And I was like, oh my God, my phone is pinging. It's driving me crazy. But anyways, I think there's a validation with that, whatever it may be for somebody. You recognize what's happening, you have to validate it, and then perhaps come up with some type of solution to deal with it.
Absolutely. And what triggers one person is not necessarily going to trigger somebody else. So it's not, please don't compare. Anybody listening, please don't say, well, they don't get triggered by that, so I shouldn't. I mean, it's really our own individual journey, dare I say that word, with these things, with any personal development and growth, it really is our own individual journey. And just try to be really kind, compassionate to yourself, and go, yeah, that does bother me. It really does. Don't worry what anybody else thinks. Yes, it might not bother them, but it bothers you, and that's really important. So how can you, what things can you put in place that will help you? So for instance, if that is bothering you and you don't want that, then you don't want to be triggered by that on your car journey, maybe you can put your phone on silent. I have my phone permanently on silent because the constant ping, 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 ping just drives me insane. But then all my family moan that my phone's always on silent. But you can't have sort of both ways. But find out what works for you. And
I did, and I would love to share it. I was chatting with my stepson, and I was explaining to him how, he asked how Ryan was doing. So I was explaining to him how I was triggered, and he said, well, let me see your phone. And he just did boo, 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 did a couple things. I don't know exactly what he did, but he set up a time frame from like a bedtime to in the morning when I wake up. And the only phone number that can come through is my son's. However, if let's say, because when Ryan's accident occurred, you know, I was, well, it was it happened at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but I didn't find out until 2 o'clock the next morning. So the hospital was trying to reach me late at night to the early morning. So if my phone sees a number that comes through 7 times, even though it's not, or a few times, and even though it's not Ryan's number, it will automatically come through, even though my phone may be on silent or whatever.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant setting to have, isn't it?
It is. And what a relief.
Yes.
What a relief.
Yeah. And you can sleep now knowing that your phone's not pinging all the time. And if it does ring, then it's important.
Right. I am struggling with the sleeping part, but
Yeah.
but you know, I've gone from like 6 to 8 times a night. Now, typically it's like 2, maybe 3 or 4. So huge improvement.
Good. And you found out what worked for you. That's what's really important.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
When you, as you were explaining before about it took you 2 days. And obviously everybody has a different time frame.
Yeah.
What was the most important thing for you during those 2 days? Did you afford yourself that opportunity just to, for instance, turn off all the distractions, or what are some of the strategies that you use to kind of calm your mind, have a validity for your feelings, and then just kind of.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting question. I think the most important thing that I did in those 2. So I think taking that scenario as one example, because I think different things will work in different situations. But the best thing I did at that was not talk badly to myself, was very much be very kind to myself and go, that's what you felt you needed to do. It was important to validate your feelings. It was important to say how you felt. And it was equally important not to deny myself the truth. So not only did I say my truth, the other option would have been to say, oh, no, it's all okay. And it really wasn't okay. So, I mean, if I'd said nothing, at least I wouldn't have said something that really wasn't true. But not only did I not say nothing, I actually said my truth. So, but afterwards there was a little bit of, oh God, did I say too much? Should I have said that? Was that okay? But it was just very much keeping those overthinking sort of tendencies at bay and go, no, you know, all you did was tell them how you felt. You didn't do anything wrong. If they have taken that the wrong way, if they have taken that badly, then that's actually on them, because they asked me, how did I feel about it? So I told them, and if they didn't want to know the answer, maybe they shouldn't have asked. So I just kept telling myself I hadn't done anything wrong. All I'd done was explain my truth, because nobody can tell me that my truth is wrong. Nobody can say, no, that's wrong, because I'm talking about the way I feel about it. I could have commented on what had actually happened and said, oh, you shouldn't have done this and I didn't say any of that. I just said, I really don't like it. And I feel really upset about it and the way that it has happened. So keeping check on any bad talk that's going on and being really kind to myself. And when I start to get a little bit overwhelmed by things, the first place I go to is just really simply some big, deep breaths, deep into, my stomach, my belly, whatever you want to call it, using my diaphragm to just get right down into my body, because certainly a lot of us will be shallow breathing and only breathing in our chest, which actually is a trauma response. So if we are in that heightened state, we will only be able to breathe in our chest. So really concentrating and hard and getting my breath deep into my body and exhaling for more counts than I'm inhaling starts to tell my body that it's okay. I'm not under threat. I'm not about to be attacked by an lion. I don't have to run away. It's okay. So just to bring everything down a notch or two. And that works for me really well. Also, sometimes I'll put one hand on my stomach, one on my chest, and just close my eyes and just sort of tell myself it's okay.
Wow.
And that works really well for me.
And thank you so much for sharing that, because I think a lot of times, you know, our thoughts and perceptions on how we perceive something and speaking our truth, again, it goes back to a validation process, but sometimes the bad talk can pop up and kind of, it might try to derail us. And,
Yes.
you know, I know, for instance, when something may happen, you know, I'm like, I kind of internalize it, you know, and you kind of go through your head, well, should I react? Should I not react? Is what I'm reacting to or potentially may react to, is that going to bring me down a rabbit hole? And honestly, I don't like rabbit holes. Excuse me. I mean, if I feel that I need to share my truth, share my opinion on something, I certainly will. And I love having those conversations, but I will always remain true to myself. And I'm actually getting better at the bad talk because, you know,
Good.
and I'm a lot older than you are. And, you know, that internal dialogue that we have with ourselves a lot of times.
But we're not taught how to have difficult conversations, are we? I think I certainly was brought up to shrug it off and not have difficult conversations. So not only did I not understand my feelings, I also didn't understand how to have conversations around my feelings or anybody else's feelings. And it turns out I feel quite a lot. It turns out I'm highly sensitive, so I am actually feeling a lot and feeling it really deeply. So and, you know, I have a lot to say, it also turns out. So we're not taught that. And then just turning to that critical voice that we, you know, a lot of us will be familiar with that voice in our head that tells us that, I don't know, we've done something bad or wrong, or we're not good enough, or gosh, what did you do that for? Well, I mean, there's lots of people will tell you lots of different ways to deal with that inner voice, that critical voice, however people describe it. But actually that's sort of a protection that we've had, and that has been really, it's been really useful. My inner critic got me to where I am now by protecting me and helping me, because as a child, by telling me, no, don't say that, who do you think you are, don't say that, and don't tell it, actually stopped me walking headlong into a lot of conflict. Yes, it made me shrink and be small, but it kept me safe. And that's why it was doing it, because we are hardwired for survival.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my survival voice, really. Keep quiet, keep small, don't cause any trouble, and, you know, maybe everything will be okay. Which when you know, as a child, I needed that. What wasn't so helpful when I was still carrying that with me as an adult. Because that stops us sort of expanding into the true version of ourselves as we grow up, as we age, as we become the wonderful adults that we are sort of meant to be. And I found, as I could be kinder to myself and understand myself more and allow myself to be the truer version of me, that voice started getting quite small and quite quiet. And it all came to a head I can't remember whether I told you this story last time, but I was running. Well, I wasn't running, but I was doing a 10K around my city, and I hadn't done enough training, but I really wanted to do it. I was raising some money for charity anyway, so I'm doing it. And I knew I was in trouble because the end of the first K, I was really struggling. I'm thinking, gosh, this is going to be really, really hard. And I fully expected the voice in my head to say, you silly woman, what do you think you're doing? You can't do this. You know, who want you, you know, you're too old, you're too fat, you're not fit enough. Who do you think you are doing this? But I realized the voice in my head was actually going, come on, you're doing this. At least you're here. You're doing it. You walk if you need to, but maybe just get to the next lamppost or get to the lamppost after that. But you're doing it and just carry on. You're doing so well. And I couldn't believe that the voice in my head had changed to that. And instead of being critical, it was being really kind and loving. And that was a really big moment for me to realize that. And that is the voice I hear much more now than the, you know, nasty voice.
I hear you. And I was thinking about the first time my feet hit the mat at I Love Kickboxing. I thought to myself, okay, I'm the oldest person in this class. This might be a little embarrassing, but I really was intrigued by it. And it was hard, but you know what? As I was doing the warm up, and I'm like, okay, just, you know, like you said, let's get through the warm up. You're going to be fine. There's a brief moment. You can get a little sip of water. You know, let's set little boundaries. Like, okay, I get here, I get this. And when I got done with it, I'm like, it's over.
Yeah.
The class is over. Really?
Yeah. And you know, the first time you try anything, it's really, it's uncomfortable because it is, we don't know how it works. We don't know the people there, any of those things. And there's no way of avoiding that. We have to go through that discomfort of that first time in order to go back and it not be the first time. And, you know, I've tried to teach my kids that just try things so that, you know, you get, try not to be put off the first time, and just little steps, just get to the next bit, and then you can have a sip of water and just try the next bit. And then before you know it, it's sort of done. And you're like, oh, I enjoyed that. I'm going to go back again next week.
Yeah. And obviously love it. I'm always talking about it. I love it. I do.
Amazing.
Yeah. I just want to segue over a moment and of course, welcome all of our amazing listeners currently on the Wisdom audio app. I see some familiar names, so thank you so much for being here today. I want to chat about your book.
Yeah.
I See Me.
Yeah.
And this may be an unusual question, but it just popped into my head. There's a lot of popping going on.
Good.
How often, number one, do you pick up your book? And when you pick up your book and you think about your story, how does that make you feel holding your book and knowing your book made a profound difference in somebody else's life?
Oh, so the first question, how often do I pick it up? Well, it's on the bookshelf behind me, and I don't necessarily pick it up every day, but I see it every day. And it always makes me a little bit, oh, that's my book. I've wanted to write a book for like the last 25 years. I just didn't know how to write it, like what it was going to look like and like how to shape it. I think for me, writing it all down, I was going to write a self-help book. I was going to write about all the things I'd learned in therapy, because I figured if I hadn't known a lot of this stuff, then maybe there were lots of other people my age in particular who didn't know. But the book coach that I ended up hiring, because I so wanted to write it, I needed some help. She persuaded me that there was value in me telling my whole story. So that's how it became a sort of full-blown memoir, really. For me, writing it all down was a real, it was like the ultimate act of sort of self-love, really, to validate my experience, what happened, especially little Philippa, because, you know, she would, you know, it affected her the most, obviously, because she was the one that had to go through it. And I know little Philippa is now me. I know I'm not a split personality, but that core of me inside is still that little girl. And actually, she's having a ball now because she's not frozen, and we have a play. I love to go cold water swimming, so you know, we do that regularly 3 times a week, and we have a ball in the marine lake that we go and swim in. And to know that people have read my book and have really either seen themselves in my story one way or another. I've had quite a lot of people say our stories are very different, but I so resonate with things that you've written in there. It's very raw. I've tried to be very respectful of the other people in the book, but it's very raw, and this is how as far as I can remember, this is how I remember feeling at the time. And there's some benefits of hindsight going on afterwards. And actually, I think now I know this is perhaps what was going on. But I feel very touched that people want to read my story, that people want to read the book. And I feel really grateful. What do I feel grateful for? I feel very proud as well that my story can help other people. That's why I like to talk about my story, in the hope that, you know, I was in a very dark place 6 years ago, and I am not in that dark place anymore. I am now living the most true version of me that I have ever been. Like, I've got bright pink glasses. There is absolutely no way I would have worn these 10 years ago, because they would have been too bright, too showy, too whatever. Now I just wear them because they make me smile, you know. And it is possible to move from that dark place. And I didn't know when I went into therapy, how much it was all affecting me, but I also didn't understand that it was possible to heal from it. And that is what I hope to bring into the world of my story for people who don't know. I can't believe I'm the only one who didn't know that. Maybe I am the only one who didn't know that, but it is absolutely possible to heal from these things. They don't go away. It's not like they go away and you're never bothered with them ever again, but it's more about having an understanding around them and finding ways to thrive. I was going to say in spite of them. It is in spite of what happened, but it's still an integration of sorts, because who I am now is very much as a result of what has happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Wow. Now I have a question, totally off topic. Cold water swimming?
Yeah. Well, of course, here in the UK, it does get really quite cold. So in December, we were swimming in -1. I say swimming, by the time it's getting, so this is Celsius, not Fahrenheit. I know I've shocked some of my American friends before, because without realizing we're talking about different temperature sort of scales. Yeah, I started last summer with a friend of mine in about half an hour away from where I live. There's a marine lake, so it fills up when the tide comes in. So it is seawater, but it's not actually in the sea, if that makes sense, because the sea's on the other side of the wall. So, which is great, because it means it's always there. You're not dependent on the tide being in to swim in it. The water's always there. And we started going last summer because it was boiling hot. So at the end of a hot day, it was really nice to go and dip in what was then a bit slightly cold water. And my friend and I just were hooked. We loved it. And for me, it's very much, for both of us actually, it's very, very much helps us regulate our nervous systems. And it's just a full body experience. You're in there, it's so cold that you can't help but be aware of your body, be in your body. And you've got to be aware of your breathing, because if you allow yourself to panic with the cold, then your breathing is just all out of sync and you have to get out. So you have to be in your body and you have to get your breathing under control, which really helps me be in my body more, out of my head and in my body. And we just carried on going. We go 3 times a week, and it just got colder and colder and colder. The colder it got, we didn't stay in quite so long, because we're only swimming in swimsuits. We've not got wetsuits on. And now it's warming up. And it's, I don't know, it's like 14 degrees or something this week, which feels really, really warm.
Wow. Well, as you could probably tell, I was like kind of not making faces, but making.
Yeah, but you're like, no way.
Thinking about it, and I'm like thinking, hell no, my nervous not be able to handle that.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
This has been such an amazing conversation. Philippa's book, I See Me, is not just for a woman to read. It is a great book, and the story behind the story to where you are today still inspires me. I want to take this opportunity to thank you from the bottom of my heart, sharing your story in a way that honors your journey. I think you are such a gem, and I'm jealous of those eyeglasses you're wearing.
Well, yeah, you'll have to get some for next time. But Janice, thank you. This is it's so wonderful to come and talk to you, because you've read it and we can just have a really deep, meaningful conversation about it. And this is my happy place. So thank you for inviting me back to do it again. I've loved it.
You are so welcome. It's been my honor. These are the stories that inspire us. And I want to encourage anyone, of course, and again, thank you to all of our amazing listeners currently on the Wisdom Audio app. I know someone out there has a story they want to share. And I know it may be fearful to even talk to somebody about it, but know that you are welcome in the Stories family. Don't hesitate to reach out. There will be a link up on the Truly Your VA website to this specific podcast. You can click on that, of course, and listen to Philippa's podcast today. And of course, if you want to register as a guest, to the right of where the podcasts are, you will see a tab that says register as a guest. Your story is important. Your story matters. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. Oh my God, I am not going in cold swimming anytime soon. And let me know if any of y'all will be doing that. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye for now.